The chamber was vast, its walls lined with crystalline panels that shimmered faintly in the dim light. A low hum filled the air, a sound that seemed to resonate from the very bones of the Galactic Council Hall itself. The gathered representatives of hundreds of species sat in their respective alcoves, each one marked by the insignia of their homeworlds. Some glistened with bioluminescent skin, others were encased in metallic exoskeletons, and still others appeared as little more than shifting clouds of gas held together by force fields. Yet all eyes, or their equivalent, were fixed on the central podium, where senior diplomat Vaxos Par stood. Vaxos Par was a creature of elegance, his elongated limbs draped in ceremonial robes that shifted colors with his mood. At this moment, they pulsed a steady blue, a sign of calm authority. But beneath the surface, his hearts pounded in unison, betraying the unease he felt. He had been chosen to address the matter of humanity, a species that had, until now, been considered an enigma within the galactic community. He cleared his throat, the sound amplified by the hall's acoustics. "Esteemed members of the Galactic Council," he began, his voice smooth but carrying an edge of tension. "We are gathered here today to discuss the incident involving the human research vessel Star Dreamer." A ripple of murmurs spread through the chamber, like the rustling of leaves in a storm. Vaxos raised a hand for silence, and the room obeyed, though the undercurrent of unease remained palpable. "The destruction of the Star Dreamer," he continued, "has sparked outrage among the humans. Their delegation has demanded immediate action, citing the loss of innocent lives, including children, as an unforgivable act of aggression. They claim it was no accident, but rather a deliberate attack by forces aligned with the Zarnath Dominion." At the mention of the Zarnath, a collective hiss emanated from several corners of the room. The Zarnath were a warlike species, their culture steeped in conquest and domination. It was not beyond them to target a civilian vessel if they believed it served their interests. Vaxos hesitated, his robes flickering to a pale yellow of uncertainty. "The humans have long been known for their patience," he said carefully, "for their willingness to negotiate, to seek peaceful resolutions even in the face of provocation. But I fear we may have underestimated the depth of their restraint, and the consequences of testing it." He paused, letting his words hang in the air. The silence was deafening, broken only by the faint hum of the crystalline walls. It was then that the doors to the chamber slid open with a soft hiss, drawing every gaze toward the entrance. Two figures stepped inside, their movements precise and deliberate. Admiral Maya Patel and Commander Blake Chen, representatives of humanity, walked with an air of quiet authority that seemed to fill the room. They wore sleek uniforms of deep navy, adorned with subtle insignias that hinted at their rank and purpose. Behind them trailed Ambassador Kira Rodriguez, her expression unreadable, but her eyes sharp as a blade. The three humans made their way to the central podium, their footsteps echoing in the vast space. When they reached it, Admiral Patel inclined her head slightly, a gesture of respect that was neither submissive nor confrontational. "Members of the Galactic Council," she began, her voice calm but carrying an undeniable weight, "I stand before you not as a soldier, but as a representative of my people. We have come here seeking justice, not vengeance, for the lives lost aboard the Star Dreamer." Her words were measured, her tone devoid of the raw emotion that might have been expected. But there was something else beneath the surface, something that sent a shiver through Vaxos Par's elongated frame. It was a quiet intensity, a coiled energy that spoke of immense power held in check. Commander Chen stepped forward, his gaze sweeping across the assembled representatives. For centuries, humanity has adhered to the principles of diplomacy and cooperation, he said. We have endured insults, provocations, and even acts of aggression in the name of preserving peace. But make no mistake, our patience is not infinite. The room seemed to grow colder, the air heavy with unspoken tension. Vaxos felt his breathing quicken, his secondary lungs activating instinctively. He glanced around and saw similar reactions among the other delegates. Even the Zarnath representative, a hulking figure with serrated scales, shifted uneasily in his seat. Admiral Patel pressed a button on the podium, and a holographic display materialized above it. The image of the Star Dreamer appeared, its sleek form drifting serenely through the void of space. Then came the explosion, a sudden, violent burst of light and debris that consumed the vessel in an instant. The recording played in silence, but the devastation was deafening. This, Patel said, her voice cutting through the stillness, was not an accident. Our investigations have confirmed traces of Zarnath weaponry at the site. This was a calculated act, designed to send a message. She turned her gaze toward the Zarnath representative, who bristled but said nothing. Well, she continued, allow me to send one in return. With a wave of her hand, the hologram shifted to display a fleet of ships, human ships. They were unlike anything the Council had seen before, their designs sleek and predatory, bristling with advanced weaponry. The sheer scale of the fleet was staggering, stretching far beyond what anyone had believed humanity capable of. For too long, Patel said, her voice rising, we have hidden our true capabilities, believing that transparency would foster trust. But trust must be earned, and the actions of the Zarnath have proven that some among us see kindness as weakness. Commander Chen stepped forward again, his expression grim. We are prepared to defend ourselves, he said, but more importantly, we are prepared to ensure that no other species suffers the same fate as those aboard the Star Dreamer. If the Galactic Council cannot guarantee justice, then humanity will take matters into its own hands. The threat was implicit, but it hung in the air like a storm cloud, dark and foreboding. Vaxos felt a chill run down his spine. He had always thought of humans as a curious anomaly, fragile yet resilient, clever but unassuming. Now he realized how deeply he had misjudged them. Ambassador Rodriguez spoke for the first time, her voice softer but no less impactful. We do not seek war, she said, but we will not shy away from it if it becomes necessary. Let this be a turning point, a moment when we, as a galactic community, choose to stand together against those who would sow chaos and destruction. Her words were met with silence, the kind that felt like the intake of breath before a scream. Vaxos looked around and saw the same realization dawning on every face. Humanity was not to be trifled with. As the humans stepped back from the podium, the chamber erupted into a cacophony of voices. Some called for immediate sanctions against the Zarnath, while others argued for caution. Vaxos remained silent, his mind racing. He knew this was only the beginning. Humanity had shown its hand, and the galaxy would never be the same. In the days that followed, the Council convened emergency sessions, desperate to prevent the situation from spiraling out of control. But the damage had been done. The destruction of the Star Dreamer had awakened something in humanity, something that could not be contained. And as Vaxos watched the human fleet mobilize, their ships cutting through the void like blades, he felt a profound sense of foreboding. For the first time in his long career, he understood the true meaning of fear. No species would ever forget the moment when humans finally lost their patience. sound of "Arr!" The council chamber had never been so alive with activity, yet the energy that coursed through it was not one of hope or unity. It was panic, raw, and unfiltered. Delegates argued in overlapping voices, their words a chaotic tangle of fear, blame, and desperate attempts to shift responsibility. The crystalline walls of the chamber seemed to pulse in response, amplifying the tension that filled the air. Vaxos Par sat motionless in his alcove, his elongated fingers steepled before him as he observed the turmoil. His robes had dimmed to a dull gray, reflecting the storm of emotions swirling within him. He had always prided himself on his ability to remain calm under pressure. But this was different. The humans had revealed a side of themselves that no one had anticipated, and the implications were staggering. Order! The booming voice of the council speaker cut through the din like a thunderclap. The delegates fell silent, though the unease in the room remained palpable. The speaker, a towering figure with translucent skin that shimmered faintly, fixed the assembly with a stern gaze. This is not the time for chaos. We must address the matter at hand with clarity and purpose. The matter at hand, growled the Zarnath representative, his serrated scales glinting under the chamber's light, is nothing more than human posturing. They are bluffing, as they always do. Their threats mean nothing. Admiral Patel's voice rang out before anyone else could respond. Bluffing? She said, her tone sharp enough to cut steel. She stepped forward, her presence commanding despite her smaller stature compared to many of the alien species present. Tell me, Representative Thraxon, did the Star Dreamer look like a bluff when it was torn apart? Did the lives of those children mean nothing to you? Thraxon's reptilian eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the faint hum of the chamber's energy conduits. Patel continued, her voice steady but carrying an edge of barely restrained fury. For centuries, humanity has endured. We have watched as others dismissed us, underestimated us, and even exploited our willingness to seek peace. But let me make one thing clear. Patience is not submission. Restraint is not weakness. And if you continue to mistake it as such, you will learn just how wrong you are. Her words hung in the air like a blade poised to strike. Even Vaxos, who had spent decades navigating the labyrinthine politics of the Galactic Council, felt a chill run through him. There was no bluster in her tone, no empty bravado. This was a warning, a final one. Ambassador Rodriguez stepped forward then, her expression calm but her eyes burning with intensity. We understand the importance of diplomacy, she said. That's why we're here, speaking to you instead of acting unilaterally. But diplomacy requires trust, and trust requires accountability. If the Galactic Council cannot hold the Zarnath Dominion responsible for their actions, then humanity will be forced to take measures to protect itself, and others, from further aggression. A murmur rippled through the chamber, quieter this time, but no less charged. The implications of her statement were clear. Humanity was no longer content to play the role of the patient negotiator. They were prepared to act, with or without the Council's blessing. Vaxos leaned back in his seat, his mind racing. He had always considered himself a student of history, and he knew well the stories of species that had risen to power through force rather than diplomacy. But humanity was different. They had entered the galactic stage as explorers, scientists and diplomats, seeking knowledge and cooperation rather than conquest. That they now stood on the brink of war was a testament to how deeply they had been provoked. And yet, there was something else. something that unsettled him even more than the prospect of conflict. It was the fleet. The ships humanity had revealed were unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Their designs sleek and efficient, bristling with weaponry that spoke of technological advancements far beyond what anyone had believed them capable of. How had they hidden such capabilities for so long? And why? The answer, Vaxos realized, was as simple as it was chilling. They hadn't wanted to use them. Humanity's restraint had not been born of weakness, but of choice. They had chosen diplomacy over domination, peace over power. And now, that choice was being taken from them. The speaker's voice broke through his thoughts. "Admiral Patel, Ambassador Rodriguez, Commander Chen," he said, addressing the human delegation directly. "What exactly are you proposing?" Patel exchanged a glance with Rodriguez and Chen before stepping forward. "We propose a joint task force," she said. "An alliance of species willing to stand against acts of aggression like the one that destroyed the Star Dreamer. This task force would operate independently of any single government, answering only to the Galactic Council as a whole." "And if the Council refuses?" Thraxon sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. Patel's gaze locked onto him, her expression unreadable. "Then humanity will act alone." The chamber erupted once more, voices rising in a cacophony of arguments and accusations. Vaxos closed his eyes, letting the noise wash over him as he tried to process what was happening. The galaxy was at a crossroads, and the path it chose would shape its future for generations to come. When the meeting finally adjourned, Vaxos lingered in his alcove, watching as the delegates filed out. The human representatives were among the last to leave, their expressions grim but resolute. As they passed by, Patel glanced in his direction, her eyes meeting his for the briefest of moments. In that instant, Vaxos saw something that sent a shiver down his spine. Determination tempered by sorrow. Humanity did not want this fight, but they were prepared for it. As the chamber emptied, Vaxos rose from his seat and made his way to the exit. Outside, the corridors of the council complex were abuzz with activity, delegates and aides rushing to and fro as they debated the day's events. Vaxos paid them little mind, his thoughts consumed by what he had witnessed. He knew he would have to report back to his own government, to advise them on how to proceed. But what could he say? That humanity, the species everyone had dismissed as naive and inexperienced, had just shifted the balance of power in the galaxy? That their patience had been a gift, not a weakness, and that it had finally run out? As he stepped into the transport pod that would take him back to his quarters, Vaxos felt a weight settle on his shoulders. The galaxy had changed today, in ways that few fully understood. And as much as he wished otherwise, he could not shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Far away, in the cold void of space, the human fleet began to move. Ships slipped silently from their hidden docks, their engines glowing with a faint blue light as they accelerated toward their destinations. They moved with purpose, their formations precise and disciplined. Each one carried a message, written not in words, but in action. Humanity had been patient. Humanity had been kind. But now, humanity would be heard. The void of space was silent, as it always was. But to those who watched from the edges of their star systems, there was an undeniable sense that something monumental was approaching. Humanity's fleet moved like a shadow stretching across the stars, deliberate and unyielding. Their ships bore no insignias of aggression, no flags of conquest, only the stark utilitarian designs of vessels built for one purpose: to ensure survival. Among the fleet, aboard the flagship Resolute, Admiral Maya Patel stood on the bridge, her hands clasped behind her back. The vast expanse of the galaxy stretched out before her, the stars distant pinpricks of light against the black canvas of infinity. Around her, the crew worked in focused silence, their movements precise and efficient. Every console hummed with activity, displaying streams of data, tactical readouts, and navigation charts. "Status report," Patel said, her voice calm but carrying the weight of command. Commander Blake Chen stepped forward, his expression as sharp as ever. "All ships are in position, Admiral. Fleet synchronization is at 98%. We're awaiting final confirmation from Earth Command." Patel nodded, her gaze never leaving the viewport. "And the Zarnath border?" Chen hesitated for a fraction of a second before answering. "Scouts report increased activity. Their fleets are mobilizing, but they haven't crossed into neutral space yet. It's clear they're preparing for something, though." "They know we're coming," Patel said softly, more to herself than to anyone else. There was no surprise in her tone, only a quiet acceptance. She had expected this. The Zarnath were not fools. They would have anticipated some form of retaliation. What they hadn't anticipated, she suspected, was the scale of humanity's response. Behind her, Ambassador Kira Rodriguez entered the bridge, her presence immediately drawing attention. Unlike Patel and Chen, who wore the uniforms of the United Terran Defense Force, Rodriguez was dressed in the formal attire of a diplomat. Yet there was nothing ceremonial about her demeanor. She carried herself with the same quiet determination that had become a hallmark of humanity's leadership in these trying times. "Admiral," Rodriguez said, inclining her head slightly, "I've just received word from the Council. They've agreed to convene an emergency session to discuss the formation of the task force." "And the Zarnath?" Patel asked, without turning around. Rodriguez's expression darkened. "They've issued a statement, denying any involvement in the destruction of the Star Dreamer. They claim the evidence is fabricated and accuse us of using the incident as a pretext for military expansion." A bitter laugh escaped Chen's lips. "Typical. They commit an atrocity and then play the victim when they're called out for it." Patel finally turned to face them, her eyes steady. "It doesn't matter what they say. The truth is on our side, and so is time. For now. What matters is how we proceed." Rodriguez stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Maya, you know as well as I do that the Council is divided. Some species are sympathetic to our cause, but others fear what we represent. They see our fleet as a threat, not a deterrent." "They're not wrong to be afraid," Patel said quietly. "But fear can be a powerful motivator. If the Council won't act, we'll give them a reason to." Rodriguez frowned. "You mean to provoke the Zarnath?" "No," Patel said firmly. "But we will show them that we're prepared to defend ourselves, and that we won't stand by while innocent lives are taken. If the Council wants to avoid war, they'll need to step up and take responsibility." For a moment, the three of them stood in silence, the weight of their decisions pressing down on them. They all knew what was at stake. This wasn't just about humanity, or even the Star Dreamer. It was about setting a precedent, about showing the galaxy that actions had consequences, even for the most powerful species. "Admiral," came a voice from one of the bridge officers, "we're receiving a transmission from Earth Command, Priority 1. Patel straightened, her expression hardening. "Put it through." The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the image of Fleet Marshal Anton Reyes, the highest-ranking officer in the United Terran Defense Force. His face was lined with age and experience, his silver hair a testament to decades of service. Yet his eyes burned with the same fire that had carried humanity through its darkest hours. "Admiral Patel," Reyes said, his voice steady, "you are authorized to proceed with Operation Aegis." All fleet assets are under your command. The Council has been informed of our intentions. Yes, sir, Patel replied, her tone unwavering. We'll make sure they understand. Reyes's gaze softened slightly. Maya, I don't need to tell you how important this is. The galaxy is watching. How we handle this will define humanity's place among the stars for generations to come. I understand, sir, Patel said. We won't fail. Reyes nodded once, and the transmission ended. The bridge fell silent, the weight of his words settling over everyone present. Patel turned back to the viewport, her expression unreadable. Commander Chen, she said after a moment, begin final preparations. I want every ship ready to move within the hour. Aye, Admiral, Chen said, snapping a crisp salute before moving to relay her orders. Rodriguez stepped closer, her voice low. Are you sure about this, Maya? Once we cross that line, there's no going back. Patel's gaze remained fixed on the stars. We crossed that line the moment the Star Dreamer was destroyed. This isn't about revenge, Kira. It's about making sure no one else has to suffer the way those families did. Rodriguez studied her for a long moment before nodding. Then, let's make sure we get it right. As the fleet began its final preparations, the tension aboard the Resolute was palpable. Crews moved with purpose, their faces set with grim determination. They knew what was at stake, and they were ready to do whatever it took to protect their people. In the distance, the Zarnath border loomed, a thin, invisible line that separated two very different worlds. On one side was a species that had built its empire on conquest and fear. On the other was humanity, a species that had endured countless trials and emerged stronger each time. And now, as the fleet advanced, the galaxy held its breath. Far away, in the halls of the Galactic Council, senior diplomat Vaxos Par sat alone in his quarters, staring at the latest reports. The humans' fleet was larger than anything he had imagined, their technology more advanced than anyone had believed possible. But it wasn't the size of their fleet or the power of their weapons that unsettled him the most. It was their resolve. Vaxos had seen many species rise and fall over the centuries, but none had ever possessed the unique combination of patience and ferocity that defined humanity. They were a paradox, a species capable of great kindness and unimaginable wrath. And now, as the galaxy stood on the brink of war, he realized that the Zarnath had made a grave mistake. They had mistaken humanity's patience for weakness, and they were about to learn just how wrong they were.